The Sony A7V is a hot mess. In some ways, it's the worst camera this year and filled with contradictions. But there's a few game-changing features that actually make it the best camera in the world for specific shooters. But I'm not personally sold on it. And considering the competition for this camera and the price, I don't know if it stacks up. The A7V is $2,899, and it's actually $100 more than the main competition from the R6 Mark III. And the R6 Mark III arguably has better specs depending on what you want from your camera. And you also have other options that are almost $1,000 cheaper with similar specs. So let's talk about the specs. On the surface, they look pretty amazing, but with the combination of features that we have and the features that are missing, it's a really confusing hodgepodge of different features that we don't really need and features that we want that just aren't there. The Sony A7V has a 33 megapixel full frame sensor that is also partially stacked. And this partially stacked sensor is a huge leap forward in terms of technology, and it's actually the best partially stacked sensor on the market. Most partially stacked sensors suffer from low dynamic range, higher noise, and poor low light performance, and you generally need 1 to 2 extra stops of light to make these sensors look good. A perfect example is the Nikon ZR, the Nikon Z6 III, and the Canon R5 Mark II. But the A7V actually fixes all of these issues. You should have 16 stops of overall dynamic range, which is a stop over the A7 IV, which had 15 stops. However, the A7 IV didn't really have 15 stops of dynamic range, and it only had about 12.8 stops of dynamic range that was actually usable, so more than likely the A7V will be anywhere between 13.5 to 13.8. But that's actually really impressive because that's as good as the much more expensive Canon R5 Mark II, and it absolutely blows the Nikon Z6 III and the ZR out of the water that only have 10.5 stops of dynamic range. Personally, I think 10.5 is actually more than enough, but having more dynamic range is always helpful. And the A7V also features an updated noise reduction algorithm, giving you clean results even as high as 6400 or 12,800 ISO. But if it has good dynamic range and good noise performance, this will be an amazing low light camera. And considering I bought an A7S III and FX3 just for low light, this is something I'm really excited about. But the biggest benefit of a partially stacked sensor is the reduced rolling shutter, which is the jello or wobble effect you get when you're shooting action. And the A7 IV and all the other cameras that use the same sensor, like the A7C II and the FX2, all had some sort of rolling shutter complaint. So with this thing fixed in the A7V, I think this is a camera a lot of people can get excited about. But what really matters to most of us is the performance and speed when you're actually shooting photos and videos, and for that reason, I'm actually disappointed. But I am excited for the other people that might find a lot of these features useful because there is some groundbreaking tech in this camera. Starting with the fact the A7V shoots a brain-melting 30 frames per second with electronic shutter, which is as fast as real-time video, and it's basically impossible to miss your shot. And this makes the Sony A7V as good as the Sony A1 II, which is a $6,500 camera. And the electronic shutter mode in the A7V is significantly better than the competition. Most cameras drop their bitrate to 12 bits when shooting electronic shutter, which is the amount of color and tonal data that your camera captures per frame of video or photos. And having more bits will really help when it comes to editing and heavy post-processing. And the A7V can do 14 bits in electronic shutter, which is actually 4 times more data than 12 bits. So if you're someone that does a lot of editing, a lot of heavy processing, and you want the absolute best image quality, the A7V is a really good setup. And the A7V also has pre-capture for an entire second. This is where the camera is constantly shooting photos in electronic shutter, but doesn't store them to your memory card until you hit the shutter button. So this will be perfect for fast moving and unpredictable subject matter if you shoot wildlife, sports, or anything where you need to get that perfect moment and you don't get a second chance. This is going to be an incredible feature for you. However, I should mention, the mechanical shutter on the A7V is still only 10 frames per second, where most cameras like the R6 Mark II go slightly faster at 12 frames per second, or the Nikon Z6 III at 14 frames per second. However, you don't really need to use mechanical shutter if your electronic shutter is so good, except for maybe flash. However, if you have a different opinion, or you think I'm missing something, let me know in the comments down below. But as far as I can see, the A7V is the best action, sports, wildlife, fashion camera in this price bracket. And I've been shooting a lot of fashion and cars lately, so this is a feature that I'm really excited to use more. However, I would have liked to see more resolution in this sensor. 45 megapixels would have been amazing because right now you can actually buy other cameras that have 45 megapixel sensors that come at a similar price or slightly cheaper than the A7V. But what I really care about is having a good hybrid camera. I wanted to do photos and videos really, really well. I actually have not one, not two, but 3 Sony cameras because they all need to work together to give me the photos and videos that I want. And I really want a camera that can kind of just do all of it, so I only need one body when I travel. And unfortunately, the A7V is not that, like not even close to that. And chances are a lot of you guys were probably hoping this would be that perfect hybrid camera. So let's talk about video. When it comes to video, it shoots 4K that is actually downsampled from 7K. So your 4K video will actually have the same detail and clarity as 7K, but the older Sony A7 IV also did this, and that camera is also $1,000 cheaper. However, I really like this feature because it gives me all the benefits of a high resolution sensor without the massive file sizes, and this way I don't have to spend extra money on CF Express cards or hard drives. The main reason I haven't bought the Nikon ZR yet is that the files are just way too big and the cards are also very expensive. And the other benefit of oversampling is improved noise performance, making your camera significantly better for low light, and I love low light. Now, 2 things I was really hoping to get on this camera was 4K 60 and 4K 120 without a crop, and we kind of got there. 4K 60 gives you 2 options. You can shoot full frame 4K without a crop, but it turns off all noise reduction, and that is a huge reason to get this camera. But you can get 4K 60 with a small 4 to 5% crop, and it leaves the noise reduction on. Personally, I'm fine with this, and I like that I have the choice, and most of us probably won't notice the crop. But the 4K 120 comes with a pretty massive 1.6 times APS-C crop, which is similar to the zoom that I just did here. Hopefully that edit worked, but it's a really big crop, and I was just really hoping for 4K 120 on this. And sadly, there's no compromise with full HD at 180 or 240 frames per second. In terms of slow motion, kind of disappointed with this camera, but I can't really complain because it's also not a feature I use that often. On top of that, you'll get all the benefits that most Sony cameras get, like a high bitrate codec, S-Log3, good color grading, all that stuff. And these specs are pretty good, but they're not $2,899 USD good, because I can get most of what the A7V does with a cheaper, older camera like the A7 IV, or get better specs for about the same price like the Canon R6 Mark III. And there's a few features that and I think all of us were hoping for, like OpenGate, raw video internally or externally, and 32-bit float. Sadly, none of those features are in this camera. And I think for that reason, this is going to be a very controversial release because most of the other brands are doing 1 or 2 of these features. But the real question is, will I be buying this camera, and do I think most of you guys should buy this camera? Well, it depends. If you're already in the Sony ecosystem like me, like I've got an A7S III, FX3, A7C, like it just makes sense to get this camera. It is kind of expensive and I wish the features were better, but having a high resolution, fast body in my arsenal of cameras is just going to make my life easier. It's going to be a fun camera to use, and it just makes sense for my gear setup. However, if you're not already in the Sony ecosystem, or this is your first major camera purchase and you get to choose your ecosystem, it's kind of like choosing your first Pokemon, the A7V is maybe not the camera to go with. Because if you can choose, the R6 Mark III looks incredible, has better specs because it actually has RAW and OpenGate, and it still has really fast shooting speeds, and it's $100 less. The one thing to watch out there is that it doesn't have the same lens selection, and Canon actually has a closed lens mount. However, something like the Nikon Z6 III or the ZR are without a doubt the best value for your money right now. They're $1,000 less with a lower 24 megapixel sensor, but you're going to get most of the specs the A7V has, and you can even use Sony lenses on that camera. So if you're in the Sony ecosystem, those cameras are definitely worth looking at. But if you're picking up a camera this holiday season, the 2 best deals that I found are the Canon R5 Mark I that has a sale right now, making it cheaper than the A7V, and it has better video specs, a higher 45 megapixel sensor, or the Canon R5C, which is essentially the cinema photo version of the R5 Mark I. It doesn't have stabilization, but it has a really nice hybrid body, and it does 8K downsample to 4K. And that camera is actually the same price as the A7V. But if you really want to save money, the original A7 IV, which does most of what the A7V does, is $900 off right now. I will definitely be buying an A7V because I love Sony gear. I have 3 Sony cameras, a bazillion lenses, and while I wish the specs were better, honestly, the A7V should be $500 cheaper. I will be buying one, and if you want to see that content, subscribe to the channel because I guarantee I'm going to make like 30 videos on that camera in the first month. So, see you guys in the next video. If you're angry at Sony, comments down below and I'll see you guys in the next video.